Hello everyone, this is Saulo Costa for GTO Wizard, and this is going to be a video about 5 tips on how to get better at studying poker. This is a very sensitive topic amongst most poker players, poker enthusiasts, professionals, because it can be very overwhelming and confusing deciding how to spend our study time. We have so many notes to study, so many different concepts. Poker is such a complex and big game that sometimes it's very overwhelming to decide exactly what direction we should take. And I hear a lot of the time, and I have that experience myself, of sitting in my chair, preparing myself to study, and not being very sure of what to do, and sometimes even procrastinated because of that, and also becoming a little bit frustrated because you're not being productive enough. So hopefully with these 5 tips, you're going to be able to solve that problem and spend your time in the most productive way that you can. So the first tip is a very common tip that gets thrown out in every discussion about poker study, which is focus on the most common spots. This is the most obvious one, but I had to include this one here because it makes a lot of sense. And with the current context of a insane platform like we have here at GTO Wizard that offers the entire game tree for us to browse, it can be very tempting to spend time on some very unique type of situations that are not going to add too much to your understanding and to your EV. So focusing on the most important spots is really relevant, and those are going to be situations that involve the button and the blinds. Okay, so you're going to be playing most of your hands from the button and the blinds, so it's important that you prioritize those situations. Okay, single raise pots and 3-bet pots are the ones that you should go with. So button versus big blind, button versus small blind 3-bet pot, button versus big blind 3-bet pot. All those situations are going to be both very common and very relevant to your win rate, so make sure you prioritize them in your study. All right. The second tip is one that is hopefully going to allow you to solve that problem of getting frustrated that you don't know what you should be doing. Well, if you don't know what you should be doing, don't spend your energy feeling bad about that. Just go do something. All right. And what I recommend you to do is spend some time practicing. Right? Time spent practicing is not time poorly spent. It's time very well spent. So if you don't know what to do, if you're lacking direction, if you don't know exactly what you should be doing with your study time, just go, for example, here to the full hand practice mode. This is going to allow you to practice a hand from the beginning to the finish, and obviously this is going to give you insight on how to play better poker because you're going to be getting immediate feedback on your actions. Okay, so instead of spending energy and getting frustrated that you don't know what to do, and then you look at a clock and it's already 1 hour past of your study time, just don't waste time with that. Just go straight to the practice mode and practice a hand. So you can, for example, prioritize those situations that we said, button versus big blind, single raise spot, and you can play a hand. And by doing this, you're going to be doing a very good service to your EV and to your understanding, because there's no way it's going to be not useful for you. Okay, so make sure you spend some time studying, practicing if you don't know what to do. Third tip is a very relevant tip that as well can save you a lot of time and a lot of frustration, which is don't try to memorize frequencies, focus on understanding. We see that a lot of people get overwhelmed with the solver strategy, and they shoot themselves in the foot by making things even more complex by trying to memorize frequencies. Okay, it's really, really hard. I would say impossible, but maybe to some people it is still possible. But for most people, it's not going to be feasible or even productive to try to spend time memorizing frequencies. So instead of just staring at a grid, for example, a button versus big blind, a random board, and then you're trying to memorize, okay, this hand best this amount of the time, don't do that. Focus on understanding. Focus on realizing what are the incentives that goes behind those strategies. And you can do this multiple ways. One of the best ways is by looking at the equity distributions, but more on that later. The point of this tip is don't really focus on memorizing, focus on understanding. This is really important. Not necessarily a practical tip, because I'm not telling you how to do that, but I'm definitely telling you what not to do. What you should not be doing is trying to memorize that King 9 suited bets 86% of the time here. Okay, this is not the way to go. Third tip, very important one, is spend some time building heuristics. Okay, this is different to memorizing, and we're going to talk about that. So memorizing is trying to say that you're going to play this way at this frequency in this situation, and you're trying to really memorize some very unique instances of strategy. What heuristics does is you kind of bucket similar spots together and you build simple instructions that you can follow to play better strategies. So by taking a look at aggregator reports, you can do just that. Aggregator reports are very, very useful at building heuristics, or to the purpose of building heuristics, because they present you with average data. So by looking at the average data of how the solver plays, you can build very simple instructions on how to play certain types of board textures. So let's say, for example, that you want to get better at playing ace-high boards. So just go here in the top right corner, you check the highest card ace here for the filter, and it's going to show you the aggregated frequencies for ace-high boards on this particular node. So you see, for example, that on ace-high board, you should be checking 52% of the time on average. This is really useful because next time you play an ace-high board, you know that on average, you should be checking half of your range. So by knowing exactly how on average your range plays, allows you to play better your given hand. Remember that in poker, you're not playing hand versus range, you're playing range versus range. So knowing how your entire range plays certainly makes you better at playing your unique hand. Okay, so spend some time on aggregator reports to build good heuristics that you can use in game. So what frequency you should be taking certain actions with, roughly, and what strategic options make the most sense with your distribution. You shouldn't try to memorize this, as I said, but having a starting point of your strategy and how to execute your strategy in game is very useful because it saves you a lot of time and energy, and of course makes you play better. And the final tip I have is, again, not a very practical one because it's not going to tell you necessarily exactly what to do, but it's going to tell you again what not to do. One of the better things you can do for your game and for your career as a poker player is focus on understanding. So what I encourage you to do is expose yourself to more data other than strategy. I feel like a lot of people, including myself in the past and my students, would spend a lot of time staring at grids, and this of course is good because it allows you to integrate patterns on how different board textures play and how different range distributions play. But again, this is mostly about memorizing or building heuristics. So instead, you should focus more on understanding what's going on, and you can do this by spending more time really digging through what other ranges like. So I really recommend you spend a lot of time in the ranges tab. Use the equity buckets here to really understand how the different ranges are constructed, and you see that the more you get better at realizing how both ranges are distributed, the easier it's going to be for you to derive what should be the correct strategy. So I really encourage you to spend more of your time taking a look at the equity of both ranges, the EV of both ranges, how the equity buckets are distributed for both players, what's the equity distribution graph for both players, who has the advantages. So really go deep into a given hand or a given spot and really try to understand why the strategy look like the way it does, instead of just spending multiple hours staring at a grid, which of course is not useful. It can definitely help you get better at playing poker, but you see that you learn a lot more and get better much faster if you pay attention to the whys, if you really try to understand why certain strategies are the way they are. So that's it. These are the 5 tips. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I see you later.